We know that Jerome Powell made it very clear, and this is something that he's believed regularly, that when we look at the inflation numbers, the CPI inflation numbers, they continue to come up in what he calls, areas, restricted to categories associated with the short-term reopenings. And if we think about the last CPI report, when we look at the headline numbers, we know, and this is the thing that we always have to consider, okay? We know that all of a sudden what happens with inflation is when we get big headline numbers, you get media folks who all of a sudden go nuts over the headline. Now, I don't blame them because they put the details in their articles as well. So it's not their fault. Just society loves to eat up these headline numbers. The problem with these headline numbers is they are misleading. When we look at the actual details within the CPI report, we see it's used cars up again. We see it's air travel up again. But guess what was not up last time? That was last time only up 0.4%, but is up over 10% this time. Hotels and lodging, right? So these are all, it makes sense. These are part of the reopening. In fact, we've been doing so many rallies over the last 2 weeks. We did 9 rallies over the last 2 weeks for the campaign. We've got our 10th rally coming up in Bakersfield, which you're welcome to come to totally for free. Go to meetkevin.com to come. But we're basically saying at our campaign, we're the reason hotel and lodging prices skyrocketed. So we're sorry, everyone. But we've been booking so many hotels. It's probably our fault. So sorry about that. But anyway, that's also temporary. So Jerome Powell was then also asked specifically about the housing market and how mortgage-backed securities might affect the housing market and their continued purchases of these mortgage-backed securities. And he mentioned that he is in the camp that would rather taper both treasury bonds and mortgage-backed securities at the same time. That's because you actually have two camps within the Federal Reserve. When you read the Federal Reserve minutes, you can see this division between some folks at the Federal Reserve who want to only taper mortgage-backed securities because they believe that the real estate mortgage market has plenty of liquidity. But others say, look, we've got plenty of liquidity at the treasury market as well. So let's just taper both together. So this is something that this is the first time we've actually heard him align with which side he is on. Addition to that, regarding worker shortages, he mentions that it's one thing that I thought was very interesting is he mentioned that he didn't think the extra unemployment boost to $300 per week is going to be, first of all, it's not going to be much of a factor for much longer. But he also mentioned that he's not seeing a very big difference between states who have prematurely cut the $300 per week and states that have not cut the $300 per week. He's not seeing that difference and actually seeing more workers come back. Instead, he believes a bigger factor in what's happening in the labor market is this mismatch between people who basically had a job, who had a career, and all of a sudden need to relocate into a new career or into a new business or into a new field of work that right now doesn't fit their current skill set. And so this is a belief that Jerome Powell has. Now, the problem is, and he was pretty clear about this, it's very difficult to be certain exactly what's going on. And he's very transparent about that, which I appreciate. There were a lot of times during his testimony that he said, I don't have the answer to that. And one of the things that I found, for example, when I'm on campaign rallies, is people appreciate you answering their question. Like, answer the freaking question. So when I answer the question, which I do very bluntly, especially in the last in the last couple of weeks of rallies where this is exactly what folks want, I'll clearly say, I don't know the answer to that, but I'll find out and we'll get back to you. I'll even say, this is my suspicion, but my suspicion could be wrong. But I make my stance very, very clear. And this is what Jerome Powell is doing. He's giving us an answer. I don't know. This is what I think, but as soon as we know more, we'll give it to you. And in fairness, I'd rather that than feel like Jerome Powell is just lying to us and then he's going to backstab us, right? Like, the saying, it's better to be strong and wrong than weak and right. I personally disagree with that. And I actually think Jerome Powell disagrees with that as well. All right, so let's keep going here. We have, Powell was also asked about digital currencies and a future digital dollar is a note that I have here. Oh, yeah, okay. So basically, this particular portion here, the Federal Reserve announced, and this was a new one, that they're going to release a report in September about how they might be able to actually include the benefits and risks of a digital dollar, so a central bank digital currency. To be clear, they've been working on this for years. It's old news at this point. JP Morgan uses an Ethereum-based JPM coin. Other banks are experimenting with these. They're great. They're used for institutional investors regularly doing cross-border transfers. They're phenomenal for these purposes. What kind of additional benefits they would actually contribute to the US economy if we had a Fed coin, we don't really know yet. And the Federal Reserve says, look, we don't need to be first. We just need to be right in how we do central bank digital currency. So yeah, those were the big takeaways from Federal Reserve Jerome Powell. We did also have mention, let's see here. No, I covered that already. Yeah, okay. Oh, this was interesting. So let's see here. Okay, this is interesting. I also have this note here that Jerome Powell is also someone who prefers to taper a little bit later than expected. So a lot of folks think the taper could come as soon as really like August or maybe even late August, somewhere around here, that within the next meeting or two, we could see a taper. Most people believe that the taper would begin in Q1 of 2022, which is January through March. However, the market on average is kind of suggesting, but it could be a month earlier, or it could be a month later, or sort of December to like April. That's kind of the range that most, like if there were a bell curve, the peak of the bell curve of where expectations are for a taper will be somewhere between December and April. And the interesting thing about this is we know that Jerome Powell is in favor of actually tapering later. I personally do not expect the Federal Reserve to taper until we get September and October inflation data, CPI data. Now, keep in mind, September and October CPI data won't actually come out until October and November, right? So it's always hurry up and wait with the markets. But anyway, this gives you an overview and a summary, my belief on exactly what Jerome Powell just said. So you have details on this.